Hello, Bravo bosses, and welcome to the Bravo Investigator podcast. Yes, you heard me correctly. I am rebranding the podcast from I Take Bravo Very Seriously to the Bravo Investigator podcast. The reason being that a lot of people didn't know I had a podcast, so I just wanted to make sure that everything was under like one name and one brand, so you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and the podcast, the Bravo Investigator podcast. So that's where you can find me from now on. I also want you guys to know that if you want to watch full-length video episodes, you can watch them on YouTube on Hurrdat Entertainment's YouTube channel. Today I am joined by Sarah Hearon from Us Weekly to do our pop culture pulse check. Today we are talking about The Real Housewives of Atlanta, Real Housewives of OC, The Bachelor, Summer House slash Southern Charm, and RHONY. Let's get into it. Sarah Hearon, welcome to the Bravo Investigator podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You are my first guest on the rebrand, so I'm so excited to have you here. And as we were discussing before we press record, it's like, why did you change the name of this podcast? Well, because a lot of people seem to not know I had a podcast. So a lot of people follow me on Instagram at the Bravo Investigator. I thought, you know what? Let's rebrand. Let's do everything under one name. So I am now the Bravo Investigator across the board, but that doesn't change the content of the show. And I really wanted to have you here today, Sarah, because I've listened to you on so many podcasts. You work for Us Weekly. And because of that, like, niche in, you just have so many interesting takes on reality TV, the Bravo world. You also have like a connection to The Bachelor. I think you used to have a Bachelor podcast, right?
I did, yes. I've been covering The Bachelor for like 7 years at Us Weekly,
Oh,
so
amazing.
happy to
So,
dabble there.
just a dabble. So, why don't you tell us just a little bit about you and how you got into reality TV and a little bit about your role at Us Weekly?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me. I have been at Us for 7 years.
Wow.
It's my first like official job, and I'm still there, which is very exciting. I've
Yeah.
grown a lot. And I've always loved reality TV. I feel like I actually started more so in like the TLC space. Like I was like Big
90
Sister Wives
Day.
girl.
Okay.
Yep. John and Kate plus eight, like all
Mm.
that back in the day. And then Toddlers and Tiaras, like I loved Honey Boo Boo.
So you've been watching reality TV from like years and years ago.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, a historian, if you will. And then it was more so in college that I got into Bravo. I think
Okay.
actually, I watched Below Deck first, and then I watched Vanderpump Rules pretty soon to like when it
Classic.
started, and
Hmm.
then I went backwards. So I've since seen everything. I'm all caught up there, obviously. And then at Us Weekly, I initially I was just like a straightforward news writer. And at Us, we all kind of do a little bit of everything. Like we
Hmm.
have like our specialties, but we still kind of have to be well versed in everything. And at the time, it just so happened that there wasn't anyone on the digital staff that was a full-time writer that was actually that into Bravo.
Hmm.
So it worked out, or The Bachelor. So it kind of worked out when I got there that that became something that I was able to start covering. And then now we have a bunch of people on staff, so we all kind of split, and I get to interview Bravo people sometimes, but I do all the Bachelor stuff, and then I do still a lot of news and like I help run the newsroom, honestly.
Hmm.
So I do a lot of editing. But it's kind of nice because I can tell you everything happening with Justin Baldoni, and I can also tell you everything you need to know about Matt James and Rachel Kirkconnell. So
Right.
it's like a combination, and then of course Bravo. So I watch everything now. I've been very caught up for a long time. And yeah, it's I always say that The Bachelor is my job and Bravo is still fun. So I
So
like The
funny.
Bachelor, but like it's very much my job and I cover
Hmm.
it and I watch it in a way that's different. And I still really enjoy Bravo and it's much more fun. And then The Bachelor, I very much look at in a Us Weekly perspective and a
Yeah.
coverage perspective, like from start to finish.
It's so funny that you say that because this has sort of become my job as well, unpaid, of course. But I'll watch certain shows now because it's my job and I'm making notes on them in a way to podcast about them as opposed to watching them in a fun way. So my fun shows end up becoming the TLC shows like 90 Day Fiancé or Married at
Mm.
First Sight I'm really into, or even like Love is Blind, The Ultimatum, because they batch them too much for me to be able to like podcast about it. It's just like
Yeah.
content. So those are my like downtime shows, while Bravo has now become like my job, right? While The
Hmm.
Bachelor is yours. So I totally get that. And what's funny is after I'll podcast, I'll then go back and watch those episodes again that I podcasted about to watch them from the fun lens as opposed to the analytical lens.
Right? It's
And it's like I
different.
hadn't watched it before, right? I'm like, now I want to watch this again for fun, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different and I mean, I would never complain, but it is interesting to take something that's like a hobby and make it like your
Yeah,
life and your job
but
and to
how
work and
lucky.
play in the same
Hmm.
space. It has pros and cons, is what
For
I'll
sure.
say.
For sure. Well, let's get into it. So Mondays, what we do is a pop culture pulse check, which I deeply regret naming because it is basically like saying the rural juror, right? It's like the hardest thing to say, pop culture pulse check. But basically what we're doing is covering all the news, mostly Bravo, but the reason I wanted to bring you on in particular today is because we do want to touch on The Bachelor and as you mentioned, Matt James and Rachel Kirkconnell. But
Hmm.
let's start off with The Real Housewives of Atlanta because we did get the trailer coming out. And I'll be honest, I forgot about The Real Housewives of Atlanta entirely. Like, are you a Real Housewives of Atlanta girly? Did you fall off of it in some of those bad years?
I did fall off a little. I always make an effort to catch up when I
Hmm.
do fall behind. It's also like because it's my job, as we were saying, like the shows that perform for Us Weekly then become a priority. So
Hmm.
then if like Atlanta is hit or miss, um, if we see like our audience starting to care, then I would be like
Then I
more
care.
caught up. Yeah, not that I don't care personally. Like again, like I will always find time to catch up myself, but
Yeah.
the way I prioritize what I'm watching does kind of go down to what the Us Weekly audience cares about, which is like always very confusing and like even like Salt Lake City is like obviously having like the greatest season ever
Hmm.
not really in the Us Weekly numbers. Like it's
Really?
bizarre. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's just like an inside moment. But so I would never not be watching that, but like I
Hmm.
don't watch it live because
Hmm.
it's not something that I we whatever. But that's just a side note. But yes, I also kind of forgot about Atlanta. What I really forgot about was the Kenya of it all.
Right.
And I was pleasantly surprised to see that in the trailer. I kind of
Hmm.
wasn't sure if they were just going to ignore it. I feel like Bravo sometimes picks and chooses when um certain things that happen. I know it was on camera, but like it obviously affected the show and they are
Hmm.
breaking the wall more, which
I
I
love.
enjoy, love.
Hmm.
But I wasn't sure because this one was really messy, not great for anyone really. But I'm glad they're going to talk about it. I think it's interesting. It was kind of like a jump scare to hear Kenya in the trailer, honestly. I
Right.
kind of thought maybe they were just gonna cut her out or ignore it. I don't know how far into filming it was, so maybe they couldn't, but it kind of took me back to not only hear that, but hear like Portia talk, like having Portia and Cynthia like talking about Kenya. I was like, oh, like what year is it? Like it's also
Yeah.
crazy because there's so many new faces and like most of the
Right.
trailer was like introducing these newbies, which like jury's out, no idea if we're gonna like them or not. But that part of it felt nostalgic to me. It was crazy to
Yeah.
hear them talking about Kenya and all of it. So I looked pretty good.
It does look good. On the Kenya of it all, I totally agree because I do feel like Bravo will sometimes skirt past things, and then there's like this weird gap. Like if you think back to season one of RHONY, and by season one I mean season 14,
Right.
where they cut out that girl Lizzie, and so
Yes.
there was literal chunks of space missing where we were just confused as to like a narrative as to what was happening.
Hmm.
And like you said, it would be too confusing. And given the fact that it happened on camera, and given the fact that the world knew about it, right? Like this was all over the fan
Right.
pages. So it would be weird for Bravo to just skirt past it. So I like that they are going to address it. But yeah, it was interesting to have her in the trailer at all. And yeah, we have these new faces. This Angela seems interesting. She's married to an NBA player, Charles Oakley. Now, I don't do sports, so I don't know if this is going to be people's new like Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Like I don't know who this guy is, but I think there's like some implication that like Portia wants to sleep with her husband or something like that. So there's going to be a tie in there. But I love that Portia's back. I love Portia. She just has like an energy and a light. Like, did you ever end up watching Stars on Mars, that weird in between show when like
I
nothing else was
did
going on?
watch Stars on Mars. I watched it. I only watched some because I interviewed Ashley I, who's in the
Hmm.
Bachelor world, and
Yeah.
she was on like one episode. And I
Oh,
watched one
I guess I didn't watch that far in. I
yeah,
left after
she's
Schwartz.
yeah, I watched it because I was talking to her. Yeah, that was some program they did. That was like doing the writer's strike, right?
You're right.
Um, yeah, I love Portia. I think Portia is at her core meant to be on reality
Hmm.
TV. I think someone like that is larger than life, and that sometimes results in we need to take a step back or we need to, it can get too big. And I think that that's what happens with her and with a lot of the housewives, honestly,
Hmm.
like it serves them to take some time away. But I think she I think it's a perfect timing for her to be back. I think clearly she's driving kind of the show. I think it's fascinating that Dennis is going to be on it.
Yeah,
Maybe with Drew. Like I
right.
didn't know that there was something there. I kind of forgot
Something
about
musical
Drew.
connection. I guess he's going to be
Right.
her production
I
manager or
didn't know
something.
Dennis. I guess I kind of just blocked out. Is that his career? I didn't realize he was in the music business. Um,
Aren't we
but and I
all?
never watched their little spin-off. That is something I didn't watch. So I don't know that much about him. Obviously, he was on Atlanta, but
Yeah,
I think it's good because it's enough history that we're gonna feel connected while also kind of soft launching a reboot of sorts with such a new cast. So hopefully it will feel like that because that's what the trailer is giving. I think something like Cynthia as a friend. I think Phaedra, who's like not was barely even like teased much, um,
right.
are going to make sense for the fans while also kind of soft launching a reboot because it's kind of what they're doing. I mean, there's so many new people.
It is, and it's such a difficult thing to try to do. We've seen it be successful, we've seen it fail. And this one was a doozy, especially because of what happened mid-season. It's like, how are we going to explain this away? How are you going to replace Kenya? And so I guess we'll have to see how it plays out. But yeah, it is a very difficult dance to bring in new people while keeping old people, while bringing in older people. And I do love what you said about like sort of like the pause of it all, like the Dorinda
Mhm.
pause, because sometimes it's just not a good time for you or not a good time for the show. And then, or even Tamra. And then you bring someone back and it gives that new fresh flavor or brings nostalgia. People love nostalgia, as Tom Sandoval
Yes.
says, right? People love nostalgia. So, I think that we get ex like well, sometimes we get bored of someone or we think that they need a timeout. And then a couple years later we're like, "Yes, we love this. We want nothing more than this," right? So, I think bringing Phaedra back in when she's like more popular than ever because of the traders is
Hmm.
amazing. I agree with you about Cynthia in her little roles that she's had here and there on a bunch of different housewives shows. I just love her little bit of input that she puts. And Portia is also going to have this whole storyline now that she's divorced from Simon, who is been out there, and I'm not even like keeping track, but he's been out there posting stories about this, that, and whatever. So he definitely wants to contribute to the season
Yes.
and to try to tear down Portia, but I don't think anybody's listening to Simon.
No, Atlanta always has a lot of noise around it, sometimes
Hmm.
good, sometimes bad, and it is kind of like another job to keep up with.
Yeah,
I more so watch it from the perspective of like what is on the show, and they don't ever shy away. So it'll
right.
all, and like those reunions, that's why they're so good because like there is always so much to unpack, but they can go below the belt. They can, go there, and a lot of times, like you mentioned, their men can be messy. So I think I have high hopes. I think it's going to be good. And I think that it's been gone for a minute, which is also nice. Like
Yeah.
sometimes you need to miss something.
Yes.
And it's weird because I feel like as Bravo audience, the Bachelor audience is like this too. Like we always want what we don't have. So
Hmm.
if we're being presented a season that's super fun and funny and kind of lighthearted, we're like, where's the drama? And when there's
Right.
drama, we're like, oh God, this is too dark. Like, I don't want it. Like we kind of as reality TV fans can never really be happy.
We're never happy. We're
We're
always
never
mad.
happy, right? That's kind of what it is. It's kind of I feel like Bravo has to find that perfect balance of what shows they match up airing. Like this is going to fulfill this quota. This is the drama quota. This is the funny quota. This is the whatever. Um, and Atlanta's always had all of it
Hmm.
really well and well balanced. So we'll see. It's hard. I feel like trailers are hard to judge. But I'm trying to keep an open mind and have high hopes because I did miss it. And I think that's a good sign because I don't always feel that way. Sometimes I'm like, how like exhausted already. And I don't feel that way. I'm excited.
I'm excited too, and I totally get what you're saying because sometimes, and at least it wasn't gone for too long. I feel there's also like a sweet spot there too,
Hmm.
because in talking of New Jersey and us not knowing when it comes back, I remember being asked about this on other podcasts when we got the word that we're not going to get word for at least a year. My thoughts on
That
that,
was
and I'm
me.
like,
Andy told me that.
oh,
And
did
I was
he?
asked, that was an
Oh, no
escalating story. And
way.
he said it to me in the second he said it. I was like, oh God, this is gonna
Blow
rock.
up.
This is gonna
Yeah.
rock boats. This is gonna be a thing. But
But the
yeah, I
thing of
was
it
surprised.
is like, is it too long, right? Because if we wait too long for something, we may forget about it, like you said. There needs to be that perfect sweet spot. And so in my discussions on your question, I was sort of like, it can't be too long. And we sort of have to keep talking about it to keep it just sort
Hmm.
of in the universe. And, it's not like we don't have Jen Hayden screaming at people left, right, and center to keep us, interested in New Jersey. But yeah, I just think if there's too long of a break, we could forget about it. But then if it's too short, it might be too soon. Sort of like with Scandival, which we were also
Hmm.
upset about. It's like, yeah, bring it back immediately. But then it's like, no, that was too soon. So
Yeah,
we're never
you're
happy.
right. We're never
We're
happy.
never happy. Okay, let's move on to the Real Housewives of OC because we just got word that Gretchen Rossi is coming back. Now, The Real Housewives of OC is the only housewife show that I have not watched from the beginning. I have only started watching
Okay.
since season 17 onward, and I'm trying. People keep telling me, go back, and
Wow.
I'm trying to find the time. So I am looking for your expertise on this. Do we hate her? Do we like her? What's the deal with Gretchen Rossi?
Oh my God, that is such a loaded question. And one,
Okay.
I'm so excited for you. What you need to do is just go to like three or four. You can skip the first. I mean, there's some great stuff. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I would always recommend Don't Come For Me, starting from the beginning.
Don't come for
But
Sarah.
don't come for me, please. But there's like a sweet spot, like around like seasons like five, six, seven, like the height of Gretchen and Alexis and Tamra and Vicky, like all being so integrated in each other's lives. Like there's so much history with Tamra and Gretchen. And it was clearly one of those things like they became friends because of the show. But I feel like they took it really seriously and they oh God. I mean, Gretchen, when we first met Gretchen, she was like engaged to this very old man, like for his money. Then we see her meet Slade, who
I heard
obviously
about
had history
him.
with Joe. Like there's so much there. And I think something about Tamra, and Tamra's at her best when she's being challenged because it can come off sometimes like Tamra is like picking on people or going too hard on people. And her and Shannon it got kind of dark and
Yeah.
in a way that I feel like people weren't really even comfortable
Right.
necessarily because you felt bad. Shannon was going
Of
through so
course.
much, and she's kind
Yeah.
of an interesting character on a side note. To like, she's a lot of fans.
We'll
Um,
get to that in a second.
yeah, we can get to that in a second. But Tamra is kind of polarizing. Like
Hmm.
she can be too good of a housewife sometimes, in my opinion. But I think she was at her best with Gretchen because it was evenly matched, where Gretchen
Interesting.
is messy and like delusional and like kind of like a great housewife in that sense. She got to the point where she lost the plot and I think was doing
Hmm.
things for the show and it was too much and it was not authentic. And I think
Okay.
I'm glad, I think she left where they took her off at a good time. And it's been enough time now where the history is there. And I think she will bring out a really interesting side of Tamra again, where she does feel genuinely burned by her. Like they were very close and they had a falling out around when Tamra was marrying Eddie. And like there was a lot of drama whether she was going to go to the wedding and all that spinoff. Um, it's all just coming back to me. But I have high hopes about it. I think it's one of those things that kind of makes sense because some of them are obviously in touch with her. We saw all of them like posting Heather is still
Hmm.
friends with her,
Jen.
Jen. But oh, it's gonna be messy and in a good way. I think it will bring out a good side of everyone in drama, but also like Gretchen's delusional. Like that's what you need to know. Like
Okay.
she's crazy. But oh God, this is a good reason for you to go back. And then there's
Okay.
that like season 10 where like Brooks was talking about having cancer and like Megan Kate Edmonds was
Yes, I
just
have to see that. Like,
that's
dying
special.
to see
That's
it.
like its own isolated perfect season of Housewives.
Right.
I'll tell you, but that's after Gretchen's gone. So you need to go back to witness Gretchen in her glory. But yeah, I also think the idea of bringing people back as friends is smart.
Yes.
Because it's doses, it's seeing if it really is going to work without putting all your eggs in that basket.
Totally.
Um,
It's like a test drive.
right. And I think Alexis obviously made sense because of the connection, but it kind of didn't really work.
Not at all.
Which I'm sure they were surprised by. Like it kind of
Hmm.
was like they probably thought they struck gold. Like
Right.
Gretchen is dating Shannon's, ex-boyfriend. Like this is incredible. It makes sense. And I'm glad they brought her back, but it did kind of fall flat.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for them to now go the Gretchen route. But I'm glad that Tamara's down because I feel like in the past she's kind of threatened. That's someone who she's like, I would never talk to. But she does that thing where she says stuff and like doesn't mean it. So
Right.
I'm excited.
So I don't, let's you tell me if you think she's down. This is what she posted. She said, I guess it's time to dust off those friendship bracelets. My bestie's back. Hashtag Real Housewives of OC. Hashtag 15 seasons. Hashtag longest running housewife. Which I don't think is true. I think it was actually just announced recently who the longest housewife is, and I completely forget who it was, but I don't think it's her.
Well,
She's back.
Kyle is the only one who never had to go on a break.
Right. Well,
So
she
I
took a
think
week break apparently recently.
right, a week break. I think Kyle is the only one who has been consistently on the show the whole time. It was Candy, even though Candy had joined season
Right.
3 of Atlanta, like she was the one who was the
Right.
longest running. I think it's Kyle. I don't think it's Tamra.
I don't know why she's saying that, but like, I mean, she's playing the game, like you said. I guess it's time to dust off those friendship bracelets. Yeah, you're doing what you're gonna do. You're now gonna cozy up to her and try to be friends with her, right? That's what Tamara does.
Yeah, I
No?
don't think she's gonna try to be friends with her because they
No?
had like no, I don't think she's
Okay.
gonna be friends with her. I think that's her tongue-in-cheek way of saying like I'm not going anywhere because she had made these
Oh,
comments along the lines of like, I would never, Gretchen's the one she has said, like, I won't film with, like, I'm never gonna become friends with her
oh,
again. So this is her way, I think, of being like, forget what I said. Like, don't worry about it. Like, I'm not threatened, which clearly, like, she is. Um, and I think it's her like tongue-in-cheek way of being
Hmm.
like, it's my show. You can bring on whoever you want. I'm not going anywhere.
Got
Like,
it. See,
that's
that's why I
her
didn't know the
vibe.
history. So I was reading
Yes.
it literally. I'm like,
No, that's
okay.
definitely not her like actually trying to be her friend. That is
Okay.
her way of being like, I'm not going anywhere. I think Tamra it is a good housewife in the sense where she can forgive. Like that's a key that a lot of housewives are missing.
Yeah, fair enough.
And when people get into that category of I won't film with you, I won't do this with you, that's the only thing that'll really make me turn on a person. I hate that. It
Right.
really bothers me. Um, and it's ironic with all the Vanderpump stuff because that's like literally not what Ariana even did. So I've had no issue with her. She was being what she genuinely would do, which is like
Right.
ignore her ex-boyfriend
Right.
after he was horrible
As
to her. Like
anyone
it's
would.
right. Like that was crazy to me that they tried to turn that into that because she was still showing up. If you don't go to
Yes,
group events, if you refuse to go on the trip, if you're not inviting people places, I have a problem with that. Like that's the show. But
exactly.
what you do once you're there, be authentic, be yourself. So
Right.
I do think it's Tamra. She will sit down with Gretchen. If they made amends right away, that would not be real. So I'm hoping it comes off in the way. But you do have to be able to forgive. In normal life, you would never want to see this friend again after they did
Right.
this to you. That this is not normal life. We're playing in Housewives' life. So I'm curious. I was surprised though. I didn't see this coming. I feel like Orange County had a strong season. I don't know. I mean, I don't think, like I said, I don't necessarily think Alexis worked, but I don't think they necessarily needed anything else. I think the connections are very real there, and I think that that's the key, and the ties are legit. But I'm not mad about it. I think Gretchen is insane, so I'm looking forward to catching up with her.
Yeah, and I didn't, like you said, I didn't think we were going to get any new cast members because they announced that everybody was coming back. But
Hmm.
then we sort of saw a shift online. We saw Tamra, Shannon, Gina, Heather all getting together, hanging out, being besties. And then you have Katie and Jen separately. And I was sort of thinking, oh no, are these two going to become like the scapegoat? So maybe Gretchen
Mm.
is for them, right? And so now
Oh,
there's going to be
maybe.
like these two teams because now we have sort of everyone on one side together against maybe one or two. So it may be to bring in the drama because if now everybody's friends with each other, that's no good.
Right.
That's not gonna work. So,
I also don't know if Jen Pedranti can really carry a season
oh
as the
no.
drama starter.
Yeah.
I enjoy her too. I think it's a
Yeah.
great cast. Orange County is one of those shows that even when people are like calling it, like people have been very critical, I feel like in those years, a couple years ago, and like of Gene and Emily, like I've always enjoyed it. I think it's just, it's one of those shows that sometimes it's really good and you're locked in, and sometimes it's background noise. But
Mhm.
I don't, I think it's okay. I think these shows like ebb and flow. I'm glad that like Emily and Gina stuck around for as long as they did, even though people didn't like them, because I think they're such interesting
I
housewives
love
now.
them.
I
Yeah.
love them. And I always like, I thought they were interesting. I thought it was different. People were really harsh on them. And I think that I don't know, I think history is a huge part of why housewives work. Obviously, you can introduce new people and then new history is made, which is fine. But I think at the core, you need something that is real and authentic. And I think Orange County has that through Tamra and Shannon,
Hmm.
and anyone who comes around is going to add things to it. So I'm excited. But yeah, maybe Gretchen is for the drama because like yeah, again, I don't think Jen Pedranti would be able to stir pots on her own. So she might need Gretchen to speak for her. Or
Yeah.
Katie. I just I don't know. Katie couldn't really even handle Heather, so I don't think she can handle Tamra.
This will be good. This will be good. Well, I'm sure you heard about this Wives on Waves cruise thing that was supposed to be starring Dolores, Teresa, and Jennifer Aiden. So I guess it was like a cruise or a bunch of housewives. I don't know what they're gonna do. It's like if it's a performance. Anyways, so it goes from NYC to Bermuda. It's a Norwegian escape. It's from September 19th to the 24th. And because of this whole Jersey Mike's thing, Jen Aiden gets kicked off, and now we have Shannon Beador taking her place. So, what do you think about Shannon being on the Wives on Waves and being selected for this? Like, I was surprised by the choice. I thought it would be another New Jersey girl.
I'm surprised Shannon wants to do this, to
Yeah,
be quite honest.
it doesn't
I'm
sound
sure
fun.
it's a nice paycheck. I would imagine this is one of those things where people will get a glimpse of the wives. I know nothing about this. I don't have any real research onto it, so I'm not. Hopefully, anyone who's going is gonna have a great time. Not shading the cruise, but I would imagine they have very specific obligations in which they have to interact with the fans, and I would imagine someone like Dolores, who is so kind and
Mhm.
so personable, will be very much one with the cruisers, and I would imagine Teresa and Shannon will do their obligations of when they have to be there. Yes, Shannon is random. I imagine these
No.
cruise directors were freaking out when they lost Jen Aiden after that insane Jersey Mike situation. And maybe they have similar managers or something, or maybe someone somehow connected them that way. Like I would imagine they're working with the managers of these housewives, and they probably were less concerned about the Jersey connection and just looking for a big name
Yeah,
and someone who was down. But that is a funny concept
it
to
is a
have,
funny concept.
right? And
I
they're
mean,
doing a traders cruise.
no.
Yes, my one of my coworkers is going on it
Okay, that
actually.
I would do.
And you like sign up, you're playing you so it's like Peter, Trishelle, a bunch of them. Phaedra might be on that. And you like sign up to be on their team and you're like playing traders
That
on the
is
boat.
so fun.
Yeah, which makes more sense to me than the wives cruise, but
Like, do you
whatever.
walk past them down the hall and say hello on our way to dinner? Like I just don't understand fully the concept and how it's gonna work. Like you said, there
They're
might be
gonna
like
pull
this
bingo
designated.
numbers at on the cruise bingo. I don't know.
And what if somebody's crazy and you can't get off the boat? What if a fan is being too much of a fan and you can't get away from them? I don't know. Maybe I'm
I
thinking too
mean,
much of it. I just think
it's
this whole
have you
concept is a
ever
little
been to
funny.
BravoCon?
I haven't because I can't afford it, but I have already bought a ticket for next year, this year, sorry. Yes.
Oh,
So I am
okay,
going.
exciting. Yeah, there's this thing called the bazaar where all
Okay.
the Bravo celebrities are like shelling their products, and it's actually a highlight. I think especially for people there just as fans. I spend most of BravoCon like locked in the press room, which is fun, but like a different experience. So I don't
Yeah.
necessarily see everything that goes on. But at the bazaar, it's them, they're selling their products and are interacting with people, and that's like your best bet to like get the pictures and like
Right.
meet people if you don't want to wait on those crazy lines.
Right.
And it's pretty fascinating to have, I mean, they're just people, obviously, but like
Yeah.
they're out there and they are just, some of them have security because it like gets crazy. But for the most part, like you are watching like Sheena try to sell a $50 vinyl, and you are watching,
That's so crazy.
Robin and Giselle try to sell podcast merch. Like they're there and their people
Yeah.
are there. But it's them at their, the lines are wrapped around, and it's fascinating to watch. It's just fascinating for so many reasons, but that's kind of what that reminds me of. Where if
Yeah.
I would imagine Teresa, will be. It's also, I've always had pleasant experiences with her. They're, to do this, they're signing up to know they're interacting with people, but does give like maybe there could be a few people who are a little overeager. So I don't know how much they will be interacting with the people versus just, doing Q&As or waving to people. But
I think
I
I just
hope
have a personal thing with boats. I think I'm just afraid of boats because of the idea
being
that you can't get
stuck.
off, that you can't you
You
can't
need
leave
to
if
get
you want to
someone on
leave.
this podcast who goes on the cruise.
I do. And I'm sure we'll see pictures of what happens, right? I just kind of want to see how it was. And if it's an interesting event, cool, right? I think
Yeah.
even, I mean, it's not for fans, but didn't The Bachelor used to do like cruises or trips for like Bachelor people and they would all like
Yeah.
connect? It was years ago and that they would all like hook up and stuff. And then
Right.
I think that's what the idea that led into Bachelor in Paradise, possibly. I
Really?
think
Is
so.
that
Because
true?
maybe I made it up, but it feels like something that
That's
happened
the
because
lore.
that's when everybody started getting to know each other from other seasons, and that became a thing. And then
Mm,
people from other seasons started dating each other, and then it was like, hey, wait a minute. What if you weren't meant for the Bachelor or Bachelorette, but you may be meant for somebody who else from a different season?
right.
And then you have Bachelor in Paradise or Bachelor Pad, right? Like that's how that's
Right.
how far back I go with
Oh,
Bachelor.
Bachelor Pad was so special.
Yeah,
Um, I wish they had a Bachelor Pad element to Paradise because I mean it is interesting. There's obviously a lot of couples that have come from Paradise, but there is a lot of it where they still kind of fight for that like right reasons, wrong reasons part.
right.
It's like at this point we're on the spin-off show. Like we're all here for the wrong reasons. Like the love is the bonus. Like I
Right.
kind of wish there was an element, like Love Island has an element of money and a
Yeah.
game, and the relationships are still real. Like I think we could play into it, and I think they
Hmm.
could merge Bachelor Pad and Bachelor in Paradise and finally like I mean it does fine, obviously, like it's gonna be in its 10th season. I know they took a year off, but they don't need it to change it, I guess. But if they're trying to keep up with the Love Islands or just make it like not can't miss television, like I think they need to lean into the fact that it's a game show at the end of the
Right.
day.
Right.
And the traditional Bachelor and Bachelorette, I get it if they want to keep that pure and we can kind of pretend that that's really for love. I think Bachelor in Paradise is the time to be in on the joke. And like
Yeah.
The Bachelor takes itself so seriously, and it always has.
Right.
And maybe that's why it's been on as long as it has. And maybe that's the key, and I'm wrong. But I kind of feel like it's time to to acknowledge that we're kind of playing a game. So
For sure.
I've said for a while that they need to make Paradise like a Bachelor Paradise pad combo hybrid,
They did try that one thing, like the Casa Amor thing, like Love
which
Island, but it didn't work. Like people were,
no, that was such a fail. They didn't even
yeah.
know what they were doing. They literally, someone watched one episode of Love Island and said, "Got it, we're gonna do this." And it instead it just turned into that girl Jill hysterically crying and
Yeah.
yelling at Chris Harris. I mean, yelling at Jesse Palmer. Like it was no, that was a
It
fail.
went
But
out.
I think it can be done. But again, I guess why break it if it's not technically broken? Like it's not by any means like the most popular franchise where it can't miss TV, but it's still on. And like you
Right.
got to give The Bachelor that. Like it is a franchise for ABC that is not going anywhere. Like they're not ending The Bachelor anytime soon. And
No.
that is no small feat. Like it's so I'm probably wrong. They probably shouldn't change anything because then people will be mad. But I don't know. Something about Paradise feels like a missed opportunity to not be a little in on the joke.
Well, totally. But since we're talking about The Bachelor, we might as well get into Rachel Kirkconnell and Matt James. And this story kind of just blew up because of the weird way in which Matt James broke up with Rachel Kirkconnell. I have talked a little bit about the history, but I'll just get into it super quick for the listeners who don't know the
Hmm.
background. So, Rachel and Matt met on The Bachelor. Matt was the first African American bachelor. This was in the height of Black Lives Matter. During the season, pictures surfaced of Rachel on Instagram either being in photos or liking photos related to the Confederate
She
flag
she was at a party
at a
in
party.
college. It was like an old South themed party. Honestly, like the details were never totally as
Hmm.
kind of clear. There was a lot of speculation. But I don't remember if it was on a plantation or it was like Gone with
Right,
the Wind themed. It was obviously just in very, very poor taste. And it was like a college in Georgia. And he
right,
was the first Black bachelor, as you mentioned. So it was, and they were together at the time when these photos surfaced. It was like February. The season had finished filming, but not, it was airing currently.
right. So when after the final rose happened, they weren't really together. I actually remember him, speaking his truth and how
Hmm.
this incident or this event was so significant to him as an
Hmm.
African American and her trying to hold his hand. And I remember him pulling his hand away.
Hmm.
And as she describes it, and we'll get into it, eventually they got back together and they ended
Hmm.
up being together for 4 years. But then a few weeks ago, Matt James posts this weird biblical sounding
Father God.
post. Father God, Rachel and I have broken up and bless us in our future endeavors or something to that effect. And people were like, wait, what? What happened here? And then Dumois posted a sighting of Rachel and Matt together, and Rachel responded, not me. We knew they were on vacation together. And then so she ends up getting to be on Call Her Daddy. And she admits herself, and I think it's, we can agree that the only reason she got to be on Call Her Daddy was because of this weird circumstance of the breakup or the lack of information that we had on it. So then
Hmm.
she goes on Call Her Daddy, and it's a long episode, and she explains her whole relationship with him. But honestly, it was a little bit of like a nothing burger. It sort of seems like they broke up for like not normal relationship reasons, but it seemed like, he didn't feel like she was a good fit. I'm not saying he's a jerk or she's a jerk or anyone's right or wrong, but it just seemed like it was sort of a normal breakup, I guess.
It's so fascinating. I have not gotten more messages about something in so long. And I know I've been covered like I've mentioned, I cover The Bachelor. Like my friends all know that. Like I'm
Yeah,
talking, but like
it's your
strangers,
bread and
whatever.
butter.
Yeah. So I'm not surprised that people were like, oh, Matt and Rachel, like whatever. But overall, like the interest in this has
Hmm.
blown my mind. Um, the breakup post was obviously weird, but if you know anything about Matt, he's very religious. He started his
Right.
season of The Bachelor with a prayer. I think people forgot that. And that was the first thing I said. And everyone was like, oh, really? And I'm like, yes, like this man is very religious. So, and as Rachel said, I hate to say it, like I don't know them that well, obviously, but I've interviewed them a million times.
Hmm.
I've interacted with them. It was so Matt. Like my instinct was like, yes, of course, this is what Matt James did. Like one, he to do it 3 hours after they break up is insane, but
Right.
he was getting ahead of it. He has a brand to protect. He is religious. He genuinely, I believe, thought that this was the right thing to do. Like, I'm gonna lead with religion. I'm gonna post like this is genuinely what I'm feeling. Like he doesn't wish Rachel any harm. But like speculation runs wild in the Bachelor world. So if they went a week without posting each other, they've been through breakup rumors before. I think he was trying to avoid that. I think he was trying to convince himself he made the right decision. I think he was trying to do a clean break. And I don't think he thought this is going to land so poorly
Yeah.
because everyone knows you're on vacation. Rachel is, they're a very beloved couple. They
Hmm.
transcend The Bachelor, which I didn't really realize, but the amount of people that cared about this proved to me that it's not necessarily even just Bachelor fans. It was
Right.
their TikTok audience, their food content. Um, I was expecting maybe like some sort of nugget. We had heard that they had some trust issues, but she kind of alluded to when they broke up the first time, he was
Hmm.
talking to another girl
Right.
and he didn't do anything wrong, like she said, but like that was a thing that happened. We had heard that that kind of lingered, so maybe
Hmm.
there was some trust issues there. But I think at the end of the day, like this was something that they should have broken up 2 years ago. And, it was really uncomfortable, I think, to hear her talk about like them fighting about dinner. And then he ended things with her and like told her she didn't have like wife qualities. Like that's horrible. And I think it, a lot of girls relate to it. So I
Yeah.
think it went that way.
Yes. It was very relatable. Yes.
It was very normal, kind of like you said, and that's not usually you go and call her
We
daddy
wanted
to
the
expose
scandal
something.
breakup, but it
Yes.
wasn't. We got the
It,
normal everyday breakup.
it was they're just two people that were not meant to be and spent the most of their like 20s together.
Right.
And the fact that they met on The Bachelor, there's so many layers, but The Bachelor has a pattern, and typically the people who get married like within a year stay together, and a lot of times they were never even engaged, but like
Right.
these if you are going in interviews and talking about these long engagements, that is technically probably the same thing to do, but a lot of times those relationships don't make it down the aisle. The Bachelor has a few successful marriages, and JoJo and Jordan are the only ones who actually like dated for a long time. The other ones
Hmm.
did get married kind of in that like hot spot. There are still couples engaged now, so like I can definitely be wrong, but a lot of times those relationships don't make it down the aisle because I think they run their course and they realize like what did we have in common to begin with? Like what was this connection? And it kind of also becomes like, are you trying to prove people wrong? Are you this or that? And I kind of think we saw Rachel become a lot of her personality. Like she kind of gave a lot of herself to Matt. And I'm not criticizing her for that. I think that's very common. I was literally in the Bahamas with them when they were doing like a food, like they were there. It was a food and wine festival and they were like doing their content. And I like
Yeah.
filmed some of the, like I was there. And it was fascinating to see. I mean, they were like what you think, like they were exactly what they are on TikTok. Like were genuinely whatever, but it was a lot about the food content. Like that was
Same.
their life. And like, by the way, what a cool job.
Yeah.
But I would imagine those lines do get blurry sometimes. And I think that it was a tough land of, that we broke up because of the dinner spot. But I
Yeah.
do think you can tell by the way she speaks about him, like she doesn't think he's a bad person. And I think a lot of people are coming down pretty hard on him. And maybe deservingly so. I mean, that was a tough line to deliver that you don't have like qualities I see in a wife, but
That'll
I
stick
don't
with
know.
her.
That'll stick with her. I think that if anything, my biggest takeaway was they probably should have broken up 2 years ago.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole thing she mentioned about how her cell phone doesn't get reception on long flights and he knows that, and that's when he posted it?
That was dark. Honestly, I don't even think she's really processed some of this
No,
also.
it's been
So
so
it's so
short
quick,
amount of
right?
time.
And I
Yeah.
think it was interesting in a good way for him, maybe, because she was speaking about him still with such love and respect, which is something I don't think you're ever going to regret. So it's like she took the high road to some degree. I think she could have probably in a month from now, she might sit on some of those things and that one's particularly and be like, ooh, like that was really messed up. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell? I don't think he did it to torture her. I think, like I said, he was like, gotta cut a clean break, almost like convince himself that like I really just did that. Like their lives were very intertwined, obviously. Together for 4 years is not nothing.
No.
Um, but obviously that was seemed looking back, who knows? Maybe I'm giving him too much credit and that he did it on purpose and he was like, screw you. But my gut tells me he didn't think that through. And
Yeah.
that is not great and horrible, but I don't think he did it to have her sit on this plane and stew. But I mean, he tagged her in the post. Like, it's not like he was trying to
Wait,
hide
he tagged her
anything.
in the post?
He tagged
I
her in the
didn't know
post.
that.
The
My
weirdest thing
God.
I thought about the post was honestly the Nemacolin, which is where they filmed his season geotag.
Oh,
That's an effort, to go and put the location. I think it all just goes to show that he
very
didn't think
thorough.
it through, like he was just like, I gotta rip the Band-Aid off. The picture from The Bachelor, the prayer, like all of it, everyone's like this calculated thing. I think it's the opposite. I think he just was like, all right, I'm hosting an Instagram. You do the location tag, you tag the person. Like, they're not, I don't, it sounds so silly to say, but almost didn't know the weight of what he was doing. I don't think
You
he realized
No,
this.
totally. And if you think about it, now that I think back, usually in these bachelor relationships, they have a PR person or a
Hmm.
manager who will put out that statement or get you to approve that statement. He just went rogue and he just did it. So maybe that's what it was as well. Like if he had had his PR person there or typing it out for him, it may have come off very different. It may have been worded
Hmm.
very different, but because he just, did it on the fly and didn't put a lot of thought into it, it gave us a lot more to talk about.
It also goes back to, right, the same thing of we always want what we can't have as
Yeah.
audience consumers because nothing is more like lame than the joint statement. We respect each other, but now we're like, that's what Matt should have done. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So this is Matt. I think he isn't like a PR guy. Like he obviously has managers and like has turned this food career, but he isn't messy at his core. Like I've
Hmm.
interviewed him 1,000 times. Like he doesn't say bad things about people. He's not a bachelor that will go shade another bachelor. He purposely doesn't like he's aware of obviously like and I think Rachel still watches the show or did, so he would like know, but he it does not take bait like that. Like
Yeah.
he is not messy at his core. So I genuinely think he thought, oh, I'm putting out this prayer. This is like how I feel.
Right.
I'm trying to avoid the speculation because they've definitely been through that. Comment on every post. Where's Rachel? Where's this? Where's that? And instead, maybe he should have given it a week and let people speculate for a second, since
Yeah.
they were literally on vacation together. So
Yeah.
no one was going to jump there. But I think he went that way. This is, I have not spoken to him. I don't know this. This is literally just me putting together what I do know of that dynamic.
Yeah.
And they are very normal people. Like they, again, obviously were getting to take advantage of these cool opportunities. But I've interviewed every bachelor almost and every bachelorette. Some of them love fame. And I'm not saying Matt and Rachel are above it. Obviously, like they have the followers, but they are probably two of them. They were probably the most normal couple I ever
Yeah, they
interviewed,
seem very down
to
to
be quite
earth.
honest. Yeah, very down to earth is the way to put it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's move on to Southern Charm slash Summer House because now it's become like one show. And
Yes.
here's where I want to start. Okay, so there was the rumor. So we all know Paige and Craig broke up. We'll start there. Then there was the rumor that Paige cheated on Craig, and that took off like wildfire. And I posted it on Instagram because it's a rumor and that's what I do. And people started coming for me. Like the gigglers were
Really?
going crazy.
Oh, yes.
And I'm like, what the hell? I'm just saying the rumor. I didn't start the rumor. But then Dumois comes out and says, okay, I can confirm that Paige is dating this Joe D'Amelio guy. This is the guy that she was seen with on New Year's Eve. They are in Miami together. She's dating this guy. And I can confirm, me, Dumois, can confirm that Paige did not cheat on Craig. I got this from a direct source, which is obviously Paige. Everybody's just sort of like, and that's what was so funny about the response to that because people are first coming for me for even implying it. And then when Dumois says, no, Paige did not cheat on Craig, everyone's like, well, Paige is in Dumois' ear. And it's like, so I'm sorry, everyone. So you think she did or she didn't, right? Like it's like people are just kind of going back and forth. Then you have Paige coming out on her podcast saying that she wants to freeze her eggs. And the reaction is just sort of odd. People are like, I thought Paige wanted to be single, and I thought Paige didn't want to be a mom right now, and she's out here dating guys and freezing her eggs, but she didn't want to have kids. And it's like, that's what freezing eggs is for.
Right.
It's for the
That's
future.
very confusing to me. Like, of
Yeah,
course, like not that she needs to prove herself, but that goes with that. If you're freezing your eggs, that literally means you don't want to have kids right now.
right
That means
now,
she's
right?
planning to, which Craig want if her and Craig were still together and she was freezing her eggs, who was the person who literally said, um, God, oh God, who was it? There was someone who was like, on my birthday, I told them I was freezing my eggs, and that's why we broke up. Oh
Oh my
God.
God, that
Okay.
sounds familiar.
Right?
Sheena?
I think who?
No. Sheena?
No.
Because she was telling a bunch of guys that she was freezing her eggs. That's when she was
Oh, it's
dating
Kelsey
Max.
Ballerini.
Oh, okay. I don't know that story.
Okay, sorry. Kelsey Ballerini was on Call Her Daddy
Okay.
and told her she's a country singer, and she told her husband, Morgan Evans, who's a country singer, that she was going to freeze her eggs for her 30th birthday. And he wanted kids right now. They were married. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like she was like, I can't give you what you want. Same thing with Paige. if Craig, who wants kids now, someone freezing their eggs, that's like the last thing they want to hear. That means she wants to have kids in 5 years from now and
Right.
make it the option. So this whole reaction has been, oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Keep going. But it's been
No, but yeah,
fascinating to watch what people think about this.
it is. And I'm just sort of wondering if we are going to see the downfall of Paige DeSorbo. I will go on. But one thing I noticed, and I really just pegged this as clickbait at the time, but in the Summer House trailer, there's this scene of Paige
Mm.
crying, saying, Craig and I are going to break up and everything is going to go away. Again, I thought it was just clickbaity stuff because they were together at the time. But now that they're broken up, like, what does this mean for her? Because as she continues to go through her life, people are getting really judgmental. So then they both unfollowed each other. First Craig her, and now she's unfollowed him. And then Austen was on Watch What Happens Live, and I actually just want to play this clip really quick of him on Watch What Happens Live because it's pretty interesting.
Of the rumors that Paige has moved on with another guy following her breakup with Craig.
Yeah, I don't think that those are rumors. I think that they've been substantiated, and I think that Craig knows as such. He didn't know for a minute, but yeah, I think that he's fully come to terms with that. That's not a rumor. Wow. Okay.
Andy's eyes there, by the way, in that clip are like so wide-eyed, he's terrified. And then Paige responded to that and she wrote, yes, a man I haven't spoken to in 6 months knows exactly what I'm doing. But Dumois said that you were dating him. So isn't
Well,
that the confirmation?
Dumois is not Bible. Dumois was
No.
wrong about Rachel and Matt.
Oh, what did she
Um,
say? Oh,
well,
but
she
she
said
just
that they were
posts
seen together. I don't know.
right.
I have struggles with Dumois. That's not, I don't love it. Just from a journalism perspective,
No, I
the
completely
sharing of
no, no, I
the
completely
sharing of
agree with you.
information.
No, I completely agree with you on everything else. Just when it comes to Paige, it's my understanding that Paige gives her information. Her and Bravo and Cocktails are very Paige focused and Paige sided, and that they get information directly from Paige. That's what I've heard. So,
I'd be surprised,
oh, okay.
to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I
don't know
don't,
either. That's just
no
what I hear.
idea. I think Bravo celebrities and the press is a fascinating thing. Any housewife who's saying that they've never spoken off record to an outlet is lying. But that being said, a lot of times when people think it's something that like, oh, they fed that, like I'm like, LOL, like they literally didn't. And then other times people like would have no idea that it was like a cooperative. I don't know. That's getting into the weeds, but people a lot of times think things, and I know that's like not what happened. So that's kind of funny the way I think people draw conclusions. I do think that I'm sure there's some truth to Paige speaking to this man, obviously, like she's been seen with him. Um, I think as far as the odds of like what's gonna happen to like her career and her path on Bravo, I think she's gonna be fine
I hope so.
because she's never wavered from what I don't think Paige lives for the cameras as much as certain Bravo people do. I don't think
Hmm.
she's changing what she would do. I think she has gotten lucky, and I think she's kind of said this, like when everything happened with like Hannah and Kyle and stuff, like she was very much in that. They only aired Hannah in the bad light. They didn't air Paige in that. And she said that, like kind of like she was very much in a lot of that, and they've always, they didn't air it for whatever reason. So there is something to be said about the edit, obviously. But I think that Paige stands strong in her convictions. I think she has a fan base that is going to ride or die for her. And then I think the actual Bravo audience, yes, I think she's going to get some heat, but she's always going to have like the gigglers and her fans because she's never changed at her core, like what her message is. And like you can be upset for Craig, but it's not like Paige ever acted like she didn't want the things she wants. You
Fair
know what I
enough.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I think there are two things can be true, and I think as a Bravo audience specifically loves a team.
Hmm.
And I've never gotten that because I'm team conflict. Like I don't want to get rid of one housewife that's fighting with the other one. I want to watch them
Right.
fight. Like
Right.
I have opinions, but like usually for me to dislike a housewife, it's only if they're not doing their job or they're acting like a producer, like your Bryn on RHONY. Like she's one of the only
Right.
housewives I've ever genuinely be like, I really do not enjoy watching you. Like for the most part, like be decently authentic, stir a little pots, show up, have something about you that's interesting. And I think with Craig and Paige, people really want to pick sides, but I think you can feel bad for Craig, but not make Paige the villain. I think it's very easy to make Paige the villain, but I don't think she's going anywhere. I think this is going to be tough to get through a Southern Charm reunion where they're going to ask all about this. Obviously, there are a lot of scenes that have aged poorly. the fact that we haven't even seen Summer House yet
I know. Another
is
season of
kind
them together is just going to be
right.
wild. Yeah.
And it's gonna be the same. I mean, we've been watching the song and dance
Yeah.
forever. So I think it's gonna be tough. I think their press is gonna be tough. I think that it's getting messy. I think she genuinely did want to like take the high road. And then he posted that Instagram, kind of making himself, looking sympathetic, not saying it's not true. And now it's gonna get messy with the unfollowing and Austen, speaking for Craig. It's gonna kind of become Paige versus the Southern Charm cast, I think, because I would imagine that reunion she's gonna live rent free for not even
Right.
technically being on the show. So I think it's
Hmm.
going to be messy, but I think she's gonna be fine. I think there's gonna be people who are, you know, turn on her, quote unquote, but I think she'll land on her feet. And I think when Craig moves on, and I think he will move on, he's on Raya.
I know, right?
He's gonna find a girl who wants to live in Charleston and spend time in his backyard.
I don't think he'll have trouble finding that.
Me
I
either.
also, but it's so like you said about sides, right? Because when Paige initially announced that they broke up, she implied that she didn't want anyone to take sides. She's like, we're
Hmm.
still friends. I mean, this was at the time. And it's just something we do as the fandom where we feel we need to pick a side when the Bravo Lebs aren't even asking us to.
Right.
And then they get involved because even when Austen was on Watch What Happens Live and speaking for Craig, you had Pat Ashul also saying like, well, Paige is mean to Craig, and Naomi was also mean to Craig. So Craig needs a nice girl. And I'm just like, wow, I'm just so surprised that everyone is turning on her like that. So it's like you said, it does seem like it's going to be Southern Charm against Paige. And hopefully that doesn't do anything bad for her career because, like you've said, she's always been the same person beginning to end. I'm just surprised by the reaction, by the fans, and by some of the Bravo loves themselves.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like the best part about us as for fans is that Andy Cohen's going to ask what Andy Cohen wants to ask. He's not dealing with the publicist being like, don't bring this up. Like if you go, when you go and watch What Happens Live, there's no rules. Like it's
Except
all
swearing,
fair.
right?
Yeah,
No
right. Except for
swearing.
swearing. All's fair in love and Bravo, right?
Yeah.
And to be on a relationship that was on the show, two shows, three, if you count Winter House, like we're gonna be talking about this in a year from now because of how everything airs.
Yeah.
And that's fun for us and not fun for them. But it is what it is. So like Austin's gonna stand up for his friend. He's gonna say what he heard. I mean, kind of sounds like the Southern Time guys are chronically online, like the rest of us. Not and
They're
who knows, like
blocking us
what
left and right. So
exactly. So they know what's going on. Or they're reading Dumois or they're reading whatever. I think Paige is also probably going to be it's interesting. What surprised me is how much she's responding to this post. Like you mentioned her
hmm
comment, she was answering a lot of TikToks. I
Yes.
don't know if it's like a coping mechanism, um, or just I mean, imagine being on TikTok and like your whole For You page is you. Like,
It's hard not to, right? Like, I even say
right.
it to myself, right? Like, stay out of the comments. And then I find myself at 41 years old getting in a fight with somebody, and I'm like, Dana, stop it. Like,
Yeah.
so I think it happens to the best of us. You can tell yourself, for my mental health, I will stay out of the comments. I won't look at what's going on online. But like you said, when your life is sort of chronically online and you're looking at your TikTok, because that's what you always do in your daily life, and it's all about you, and you see something that you don't feel is correct, you want to be like, see you in court.
Right.
No, I'm
Listen,
just
and
kidding.
like she's got the gigglers don't mess around.
They
So
don't, they terrify me.
they do have a strong fandom. So she'll lean into that. And I think it's going to be really fascinating. The timing is tough for the
Hmm.
where these show. I mean, I guess there never really would have been a good time because at least
Right.
they're filming, so she doesn't have to do it on the show. But
Yeah.
you're gonna have to go in and do commentary on whatever happened on Summer House between the two of them. Craig is gonna have to do this reunion. Like it's definitely gonna dominate for a while. And
Yeah.
I think she's gonna catch some heat. But I think if you're like really looking at it, like I said, two things can be true. Like you can have sympathy for Craig, which I think is fair, but I think you can also look and be like, the one statement he did put out, I mean, he was like not exactly saying what she said, which was pretty neutral. He was kind of, making it clear that he was the one who was broken up with and he's sad and whatever, and that's fine too. But then don't, it's tough because they're both gonna try to play it. I don't know. I'm
Well,
I'm
something interesting
curious.
did come out this weekend because he's doing some press for like some of his home show stuff. And he said that he was going to be moving to New York and working in production. So I
Craig
hadn't
said
heard,
that.
yeah. I mean, this was from another fan account, so I don't have it directly from the source, but this was somebody who was at one of these like sewing
So
home
he like
shows that
told
he's
some
been
of
doing
them.
over the weekend, and he said that his plan was to move to New York and to work in production. So that's interesting because that sort of changes things. I think a lot of people thought, I mean, marriage and kids aside, a lot of people were also like, it's the whole long distance of it all too. She's never going to
Right.
move to Charleston. He's
Charleston.
never going to move to New York. But I mean, I don't know if we'll hear more on that or
Why is
whether
it
that's true.
giving Jax Taylor moving to Tampa for hockey? That's what it's
He's
production.
got a social media job.
I mean, I don't know. I love Craig, but
Fair enough.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting what Austen said. I only saw the one clip. I think that you posted of Austen on Chicks in the
Mhm.
Office talking about like the phone call that he
Yeah.
had with Craig and
I
how
couldn't believe he did that. I'm pretty sure Craig is mad right now.
that Austen shared
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, that was a little too word vomity.
Yeah, it was that was insight though, because it was, they were planning
Yeah.
their holidays, and I think kind of like Matt saying to Rachel, like, I think we're at a crossroads here where like I should want to propose to you. I don't. Paige should want to get engaged to Craig. She doesn't. Like, this is not a crime to want to end a relationship
I know.
just because we all witnessed it and we were invested in it. Like, Paige and Matt James are kind of similar and they're kind of becoming like what happened, and they're becoming these like big bads. They didn't cheat on anyone. They didn't like they came to a conclusion. Like I'm having a hard time with this villainizing, and maybe I'm just like being too nice, which is not really my thing. So I'm
No,
confused by that if that's what it is. But I'm very confused by the outcry. I think the Matt ending it the way he did was messed up. I'll give you that for sure. And I have a lot of empathy for Rachel. And I think, like I said, she carried herself well. And I'm not trying to go backwards, but the parallels just kind of coming to me. And I think that that's the same thing with Paige. I think she just realized I should want to get married to you, and I don't. So I should tell you. Like,
I
I don't
think
think that she did anything wrong. Like, I'm good with it. Like, do what you want, girl. Like, I don't know.
Sarah, here's what I think it is. I think it is the scandal of it all. I think we want to find more in a breakup than is actually there. I think we want it to be salacious and nefarious
Mm.
because we want the Easter eggs. We want that's why everybody's into the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively thing, which I am so out of the loop on and now I need to get back into
Oh,
because
you're so
every day there's a
lucky.
new thing and people are like, "Ooh, more, more, I want more to it." And because Paige and Craig just broke up, people are like, "Okay, what else? What else?" So they're trying to find
Yeah.
things and it's nobody wants to just accept it's a regular breakup or that Rachel and Matt are a regular breakup. I'm betting you people will still keep stalking Rachel and Matt to try to find them doing something nefarious just to talk about because
Yeah.
people want a salacious breakup.
Yeah. It's true.
There's one other thing I wanted to mention about Southern Charm. So this actually came out last week, and I got a little more information on it this week. So you know that guy Ryan? Probably not, because he barely speaks on the show, but he's new on Southern Charm. Do you even know who I
Wait,
mean?
who?
His name is Ryan. He is in the cast photo. He did not speak at all ever. He was at Patricia's birthday party.
Is he the one married to
I think
the
he's
other
married.
guy?
Yeah, he's married to a guy. I think that's all we know about him.
Okay, okay.
That guy, okay?
All
So
right.
in last week's Southern Charm episode where everybody's coming at JT, and it looks like everybody's coming at JT because he's accusing Gaston of cheating on Taylor with Sally. And then Ryan in his like he looked so
Oh
nervous, his
yeah,
face
that
was
guy.
so red, and he's like, JT, it's my understanding that you're spreading rumors and these things are not true. So he posted a story last week after this to give a little bit of more context, which it didn't really, but let me read it to you. So he says, our reactions in tonight's episode stemmed from the host of the after party, JT, attempting to present on his television blackmail against some of the cast material he had obtained from a stalker who some cast members have a restraining order against. Nobody was trying to push him out of the group. Everybody in my car that night expressed that they were going there to hear him out and make amends. There's a difference between being a truth teller and being malicious towards others with the intent of humiliating them to have a moment for yourself. You can take cheap shots at me all day, but I will always stand up for my friends. So I'm like, what? What's Stalker? What's he talking about? So Bravo and Cocktails actually got some information on this, so I will credit her for this. She says that she got information and could not confirm, names or who, but that there's a male cast member and a female cast member on Southern Charm who have a restraining order against this woman in town, this stalker. JT was dating this woman, and she apparently was like desperate to get on the show and was like hooking up with JT to like try to get in the spotlight. She apparently may have shown him something that would make the cat like a cast member, one of these people who got the restraining order, would make that person look bad, which led to the restraining order. So when JT was saying like a friend told him something, it was actually the stalker that he had been hooking up with that was sharing this information with him. So while it looked on screen like everybody was mad about the Taylor thing, they had actually cut out this whole part about him dating this stalker and the stalker releasing this information, and that's what they were actually upset about. And apparently the cast was mad at production, and the showrunner was fired right after this scene. Wild.
Huh.
I just found
Is
this out
that
today.
is that the girl that they show JT in this most recent episode where he mentions he had a girlfriend when he's talking to Vanita?
I'm not sure. And you know how he started dating Benita in real life later and
Which
then
like,
apparently broke up with her via dating someone on Instagram. Is it that girl? And was that the same girl as the other girl, right? Like, who is this person?
you know
I
what's so
have so many
interesting about
questions.
Southern Charm, and I love Southern Charm. I think it's a very fun show to watch. But I feel like I've always kind of edited it too much. Like it's too
Yes.
produced.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's so much with that cast, like even going back to like the old days, like we didn't need like a polished vert. Like I think it's I guess like the vibe of like the South part and
Right.
like it's not Vanderpump Rules. It's not supposed to be like down to the nitty gritty. Like they're supposed to have some sort of aspirational thing, but like I think we need to get rid of that. I think it's always been produced weird. I think this Craig Austen Shep storyline shows that like it's very strange to me that they're like kind of these like 30, 40-year-old men like talking about like a friendship breakup. Like I'm like, what are we doing here? And I feel like it's because of the show, but they don't ever break the wall on that show. And they really, I feel like just edit it to its own disservice. Like it's still good, but it could be great. Like it,
Yeah.
and I think that this is an example. I don't know anything about this, so I can't say what's
I don't have
happening,
any
but
more information than that, but I
that
was just
sounds
like,
pretty
well,
fascinating to me. Like even the fact that they cut around initially like Shep's girlfriend
mhm.
kind of being a fan. And then they kind of showed it a little bit this week with the flashback of that one episode where she kind of brings up the show or whatever. I think that we're at the point when a Bravo show's been on for 10 years, like we can't even pretend to have a wall anymore. Like it can be the kiss of death. I think with Vanderpump, it kind of was like, but it also was like we had no choice. Like I don't want to watch a lizard funeral or a dog puppy party. Like I want to, these are people that are on a reality show that are going to have people interested in them because they're on a reality show, whether they're a stalker making things up or they are trying to date you to be on the show. Like that is interesting to me because that's their real life and that's what they're actually going through. Like
Right.
I don't need this like fake thing of my job is this and I'm gonna, be a whatever. Like I want to know that. So that's disappointing if that's true and that it really became like this weird, like just Sally Gaston Taylor like thing that and I mean the Gaston, it's also fascinating because of like the Southern hospitality connection and how they were on
Right.
that show. Like I think we could be doing so much more
I
with
totally
this. Like
agree.
these are some messy people and like let's lean into it. Like I don't know.
I
It's
think
weird to me.
they tried to lean into it with Sally. Like it made sense to cast her because it's like, okay, she has this connection to Gaston and Taylor. But then at the same time, and I've said this a couple of times now, like when Craig shows up at her housewarming party, I'm just like, but how does she know Craig, right? Like how is she really
Right.
connect? Like who are her friends in this group? And so she doesn't really have that organic fit in that way. And while it's messy with someone who also doesn't really have a place on the show. Taylor is somebody's ex, which, is definitely how sometimes people come on reality TV. We've seen it happen a million times, but she doesn't have any friends in the group right now either. So
No.
that doesn't feel like an organic fit. And then you have JT constantly talking about the group, quote unquote. And to me, that's just like another word for the show. And it just
Right.
feels like I keep using this word, it just feels like a very inorganic fit of groups of people this season. There's definitely our key players that we definitely need to keep. And all of these people are great on their own, sort of like RHONY,
Yeah.
but not a great fit together. I definitely think we can get back there because at its root, Southern Charm is sort of about these old families and old school this and that. And that's why I think Molly sort of fits because
I love
I love
Molly.
Molly. And even though we don't know her and we don't know who her friends are either, she just fits better. She's from the South and she just has that similar vibe and history that I guess some of the older school characters have. And so she
Hmm.
just fits nicer in some way.
And I don't think she's trying. She didn't really
No,
come on with an agenda. Like
right.
I feel like we're really seeing Molly and she's a little weird and it's endearing and um it works. I think JT is trying to like stir pots, which like you can kind of respect because like we need a show, but he's just not good at it.
Yeah.
They don't respect him, so
No.
nothing he does. Sally kind of gives like they saw her on Southern Hospitality and they were like, "There's so much happening on that show, but you're gold and you have enough of a tie, so we're gonna move you here because we don't have a Catherine anymore. We don't
Yeah.
have the mess." So I get the intention, but I don't think it would, unless there was legal reasons that they couldn't talk about this person, which maybe
That
I,
must have been it. Yeah.
it's very weird to me that they would cut it out. I mean, I guess they don't want this whole season to be meta of Shep's girlfriend was a fan, this person, whatever. Like, I guess that would get tired, and that's not what they want to do. And they're trying to
Hmm.
make a show and, follow certain like storyboards. But it just feels like a disservice
Yeah.
to try to frame it this way because Taylor didn't take the bait either. So it's not like a fun storyline to watch. Like, it's very weird.
Yeah. And it definitely feels like
Gaston,
we're going through storylines. And yeah,
Gaston
Gaston,
is
this guy, this
fascinating
elusive
because
Gaston who we never see.
right, like clearly he doesn't want to be on the show,
No.
which is kind of his only redeeming quality because everything we know about him is horrible.
Yeah.
And you would think if he wanted to be on the show, that would technically, I guess, be another strike against him because it's like, oh, he's this thirsty guy and he's a fuck boy and he's here and he's messing with these girls. But the fact that he doesn't want to be on the show, is it because he is like hiding more and he's trying to think through? Is he just like genuinely like doesn't actually like drama and they're making things, whatever? Is he busy? Like I feel like it's so strange to have him be such a central part, but we don't
Yeah.
ever really get to see him. And I'm not saying I want a Gaston show, but it's just weird to me. It makes me question sometimes where I'm like, well, why doesn't he want to be on the show? Should that be like a point for him? Like he's just a guy and he's getting dragged? Or is he like one of the only people who's ever actually thought it through where if I go on this show, my life's going to be worse? Or usually those Bravo people will go on and be like, oh, I am committing a crime. Oh, who knew I would
You're
get
so
caught?
right.
You know what I mean? Like that's like a true narcissist. Those Bravo people who are like literally actively doing something wrong and like
Yeah.
put themselves on television.
Like, what are you thinking?
Um, yeah, but this guy, maybe he's the first person to ever be like, whoa, it's only going to be worse if I actually go on. But I don't know. He's fascinating to
I
me.
think it could be a combination of both, right? I could see him being like, oh, I don't want to be part of this stupid thing, slash, all of my dirty secrets are going to come out and I'm going to be called on it, right? He doesn't sound, it does sound like he's kind of a cheater and has cheated in some respects on some people.
There's got to
And
be
maybe he doesn't
some
want to talk
smoke
about
fire
it.
with this guy.
Yeah, there always is. Um, we are running a little late and I don't want to keep you, but do you have time to talk about RHONY really quick?
Sure.
Okay, so we did get like a shed casting announcement for The Real Housewives of New York.
Shady,
Shady,
wasn't
but
it?
people were losing it. This came out before the reunion aired, and we were sort of like, is this for Bryn? But then Shed Casting came out being like, we always do this. Don't send us DMs. We'll block you. Leave us alone. But I think it is about Bryn. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, I was surprised. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, you know what? Like, of course, they're always casting. I get it. It's like at the end of every episode of The Bachelor, are you
Hmm.
looking to date our next Bachelor who doesn't even exist yet?
Right,
Like,
right.
they're always looking for people. That's what they claim. Um, oh, I think that was a bad move. I am not very into this cast. I don't have strong ties. I wouldn't really be upset if any of them went. I honestly don't know what they should do. I don't think Bryn makes sense to keep. But I think it was a disservice to the show
Hmm.
to do that. I think they should have waited. Listen,
Right.
no matter when they posted it, people would have been talking about it because this is such a like point right now of people not enjoying this reboot. But Andy and they've been very like strong in their convictions, trying to say this is the group.
Yeah, that's
Granted, do
true.
they have to say that because it was when the season was airing and there's nothing they can do about it? Do they genuinely believe it? Maybe both. I don't know. But I think to do it right before the reunion, after I mean, for the wrong reasons, but the show was getting some hype, was a weird move. I don't know. I think, I don't know. What do you think they're gonna do?
I don't know what we're gonna do with it because you're right. Like I think Andy doesn't he doesn't want to stand down on this was the cast that we chose, right? Because he doesn't want to be like whoopsie. But what do we
Right.
do now? We're gonna start again with a whole third cast? Of course not.
Of
People have
course
talked about
not.
integrating some of the older cast. That's not gonna work.
No
Then
way.
I came out there with the brilliant idea of let's take all the Summer House ladies and make that the cast of Real Housewives of New York. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people didn't. Lindsay Hubbard DM'd me and said, let's fucking go. So I wouldn't hate it. And she is looking for a place on reality TV. She did say on the Not Skinny But Not Fat podcast that she feels that Bravo should find a place for her.
Oh, that was incredible.
That was
That
interesting.
was a reality. That was a reality star at her core,
Yeah, it's
pitching
just like,
herself. Hold a meeting for me,
you
the Lindsay
need me.
Project. That's like a movie star going to the getting a like a production deal. That was pretty incredible. That confidence.
It
I
was. It,
think
it
she would
didn't get
make
any traction
sense.
either.
Honestly, I think you could just throw her on with
Mhm.
anyone. She would be wild to watch. I think there's a lot to say about Bryn, for better or for worse. My thing, I mean, this is gonna sound bad, and I don't actually mean it, but like even for this happened, like her biggest crime is that she just like is trying to like produce the show.
Right.
And that was something I've been saying since last season. When people loved her, I still didn't. I like didn't get it. I kind of found her a little annoying, but I also was like, all of them are guilty of it a little, of being too savvy and like trying to, whatever. But that Uba essay she wrote for Glamour that I read right before I talked to you, because I know you would want to talk about it. I mean, there's a lot in there, but one of my biggest takeaways was like confirmed all my suspicions that Bryn is like trying to produce the show, calling
Right.
Uba to say, I'm going to give your hot sauce a bad review so we can talk about it on the show. Like,
Right.
I don't want that. Like, you can be, I mean, far be it for me to say I want Bethany back because I don't, and she's lost the plot. But like, the skinny girl of it all was done geniusly. It was on the show for better or for worse, organically. Her grabbing that bottle of skinny girl, don't talk about Tom, made it happen. We weren't talking
Right.
about, like, it wasn't, it was, yes, Bethany was smart producing herself in some degree, but she also would go fly off the handle and say crazy shit and let
Genuinely.
herself go there genuinely. Like, no one wants to say like there's a Holland tunnel on my vagina or whatever the fuck she said. Like, that was not like a good look. They were slut shaming each other. They were digging each other. Like, they went there. They didn't let themselves see the cameras. There's not one person on that show that isn't aware of the camera, and it's a disservice, and it's not what you want from your show. And Bryn is, I think, the biggest culprit of it. And I think she
Yeah.
did it last year too, and people ignored it because she was funny. And then she went into this season specifically with a plan, and they all kind of were just like went with it until she went too far,
Right.
and they all finally kind of saw the light. Granted, I don't necessarily think Ubas should be on the show either, based on reading that, because she clearly wants every single thing she said to air, and she can't accept an edit, and she's this or that, and she flies off the handle in a way that doesn't even make sense. Even reading it, I'm like, I don't, you have to be able to like be yourself, show up, let the cameras show what they want and edit it. And I just think they're all a mess.
So now that I think about it more, now that you've said that, like maybe they aren't meant for reality TV. Like I do like them each as individuals, as
Yes,
people, but maybe they're not TV people, right?
that's
There's certain
my
people who are
vibe.
TV people. Who were we talking about initially? Portia.
Mhm.
Portia is meant for reality TV. And I can't look at any of these women currently on the Real Housewives of New York and say, this one was meant for this.
Right. And it's a fine line because listen, you don't want people that are too meant for it, where it's
Yeah.
like fake. But I think you need to want it. And I don't really think they do. And that's like fine. Like again, I think they're all fine people. I just don't think they're reality stars.
Yeah.
And I think I guess you can keep half. I think Jessel has that in her a little. And then they just shit on her for it.
Yeah.
So like that's not fun. Like, I don't know. I think Jenna Lyons, I think Raquel and Jenna were pretty refreshing this year. I think they were
Yeah,
fine.
refreshing.
I don't dislike them necessarily, but I don't need a show built around them. Like I don't necessarily think they can carry a program. Um, so I don't know what they do. I mean, I guess you can keep half of them and then move. We just need some like some fire.
Yes,
And
fire. That's
someone
right.
like Lindsay
Someone
Hubbard,
like Lindsay.
love her or don't, she's a reality star. She has that in her. She's gonna show up and she's gonna lose it, and she's gonna yell things like, how many sandwiches did you make for me? And she's not gonna be, now she knows like technically she's like making lines, but I genuinely believe she's saying that stuff because she means it. And sometimes it comes off funny, other times it comes off insane, but you accept it and you go with it and you can tell your context, but like you have to be willing to accept what the show
Yeah.
is. And Uba, that whole essay was basically like, this show doesn't represent me the way I think it should, which is not like
It's
something we
intent.
need in a reality story. Yeah, like it's not supposed to, it's not a documentary to see the other side of Uba.
Right.
Like we're getting snippets of your life and like show up or don't. Like I don't
Right.
know. That was troubling to me also just in sort of the future of the show. I don't know what they do. I don't envy the people in that room making that decision because I also think it's a no-win. No matter what they do, people are going to be mad.
I feel like we should scrap it, which is so sad because if you look back at old RHONY, it is so nostalgic for us. We love it. I could, it's Sunday right now. After this, I could go sit down on the couch and watch 10 hours of old RHONY and
Pick
just feel
any
so
starting
comfy
point and
and
you'll get gold.
cozy. It'll be great. But it's ruined its luster. It's almost like when you look at a show like The Office, which went on for so many seasons longer than it should have. And if it ended at its prime, that's how we would have remembered it. But instead we remember sort of the trickling of how it ended. And that's unfortunately how we're going to remember RHONY. We're going to remember this clusterfuck of a transition that didn't end up working out. And, it's just unfortunate. And I just think there's nothing wrong with ending, like, if that's what you want to do, or even Vanderpump Rules. We don't need another Vanderpump Rules. We
No,
don't
I
need it.
know.
Nobody's asking for it. I understand about the
It's
concept of
okay
going back to
for things
grassroots.
to end. It
Yes,
is.
like,
It really is. It's really weird. I think, well, I also think because Bravo, because especially like Andy said this, like he based Housewives on soaps and soap
hmm.
operas don't end. But like, or
Oh,
not
okay.
based that he loved like soap operas and that was one of his inspirations, like obviously. And so I think maybe, and I don't want to just like all of a sudden like cancel all these Bravo shows by any means. There's plenty that even go through like a low and then come back
Right.
better. But it's because of the formula. Like there really is no ending point, and it's very rare
Yeah.
for a Bravo show like to end. Like even I feel like they ended like Shaws of Sunset, and aren't they like trying to bring that back too? Like not everything. Like we get so attached to these people, but it's okay. Like we can go watch Tom Sandoval on Traitors. We can go put them on Special Forces. We can go see them in a couple of years. If one of them gets married, give them 3 episodes of something. I don't know. Like I think it's okay to like not be on. And it makes me sad too, but like not everything can go forever, and like that's okay. I
Well,
feel like they should just make a show that's called like I don't know, Vanderpump, like some call it something
yeah.
else and still make it at Sir. I don't know. Like I don't think we even need to have it under the Vanderpump umbrella. Like it almost feels like you're tricking people. Like they could just have ended RHONY and then started a show called like Manhattan
Moms
Women. I
or
don't
whatever
know,
was
like
supposed to
something
that original
stupid.
show,
Yeah,
right?
Manhattan Moms. Like I don't know, like putting it under the umbrella, even calling it season. Like I was laughing when they
Exactly,
announced like the
exactly.
season 16 reunion. It's like, is it?
Of what?
Right. Like I don't know. It's weird, but I don't know. It's a shame because RHONY is just it was so good when it was good, and I don't know what they do. I do feel like they're gonna try to double down and save some of them because they, made such a big fuss about the
Hmm.
cast. But
I think so too.
besides like Jessel, I don't think they even want to be there.
No, I really agree with you.
Like,
Well,
what's the point?
I 100% agree. They don't seem to be having fun anymore. And if they're not having
No.
fun, we're not having fun,
Right.
right? Well, Sarah, thank you so much for being here today. Where can the people follow you if they want to see what you have going on?
I feel as though I'm going to tell them and they're also going to be like, Matt James sucks. Why'd you defend him? But I didn't mean to. I was just working this out in real time. But I am at Sarah Hearon on Instagram and feel free to slide into the DMs anytime. I love to chat. And obviously read us weekly because we got a lot going on over there on usmagazine.com.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Love you, BBs. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Bravo Investigator podcast in partnership with Hurrdat Media. You can watch full-length videos on Hurrdat Entertainment's YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Bravo Investigator. If you enjoy the show, please leave me a 5-star review. Love you, BBs. See you next time.
A Hurrdat Media Production.